It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and we got a good week for you this week. The weekend of November 16th, 1990. And there's a couple of noticeable movies here, and we're going to start off with the first movie, the big new release of the weekend. You know, I take it back. Because honestly, when you really think about it, this movie was a hit at the box office in its first weekend, but it didn't really go on to do anything special afterward. Let's take a look at the movie, and I'll talk about it afterwards. And I don't know. I don't think this movie did as well as people might think it did. So let's take a look and see what the first movie is. Of course, it was Home Alone. Home Alone came out this weekend on November 16th. And needless to say, it made a pretty penny at the box office. Not only did it become a hit the first weekend, but it was one of the biggest hits of all time, pretty much, because it was the biggest. It ended up becoming the biggest comedy of all time, surpassing Ghostbusters, and it wouldn't be surpassed again until Hangover Part 2 came out 21 years later. But not only that, the movie, which was intended solely as a Christmas movie, it played way past Christmas. I think it didn't get out of the top spot until February or March of '91. It was there for a long time, and people would just keep coming back to see it. It had like a Titanic vibe, where it was just like it kept being the number one movie for several weeks. No matter what new movie came out, no matter what was coming out, expanding out the theaters, it would always be at the top spot. And people would go to see it so many times that by the end of its run, I think it was in many theaters until midsummer of '91. I mean, it was a big hit at the time, and of course, it also inspired a lot of the comedies that we would get in the '90s. It was a big success for John Hughes, probably the last really big success he had as a filmmaker, even though he would have successes afterwards, but this is his biggest success to date. And of course, this is Chris Columbus's first real big hit, and also launched the career of Macaulay Culkin. You can kind of say it launched the careers for several actors in here. I mean, in terms of successes, like Joe Pesci was a pre-established actor, but this is one of his biggest successes. So was Daniel Stern, John Hurt, Catherine O'Hara. So many names, so many people to talk about in this, and the movie still holds up to this very day. I mean, I don't think I really need to delve too much into Home Alone, largely because there really is not that much more to say that hasn't been said already. It's a classic movie for a number of reasons, and I still believe it's a movie that really honestly could have worked only back in the 90s, because, I mean, when you look at what Home Alone basically is, it's a kid who's at home alone, there's no internet, the phones are mostly out until Christmas time, so there's no real way for the family to connect. There's no way to connect them through like the technology we have now. So it'd be really hard to make this movie nowadays. Even though they did try last year with Home Sweet Home Alone, which was I want to say it was okay, but I liked it. It was certainly better than anything after Home Alone 2. I mean, I know a lot of people hated it, but I liked it better than anything after Home Alone 2, because Home Alone 3 is a mess of a movie. And we don't talk about the two direct-to-video sequels, but yeah, like, Home Alone was really one of those lightning-in-a-bottle movies that really took off much better than I think anybody really expected it to. I think this was, it's interesting when you look back at the history of the making of this movie. This was originally a Warner Brothers movie, and actually started filming as a Warner Brothers movie, but they got out of it at the last minute. Fox came in and picked it up, and then the rest is history after that. I really don't have to go into it review-wise, because I think everybody has a pretty good idea of how they feel about this movie. Overall, it's a classic movie. It's a classic movie all around. It's very funny. It finds a good balance between the funny moments and the more serious moments, where Macaulay Culkin, of course, has to realize that he needs to mature a little bit as the movie goes along, and he misses his family, even though it says at the beginning that he'd rather have no family whatsoever and go on a vacation be by himself. I mean, going on vacation would be the second one, but you get the idea. You get the idea that I'm trying to get through here. But like I said, there really is not a whole lot more I can add to this that hasn't already been said already. I've done numerous blogs talking about how much this is a classic movie. Many people have already talked about how this is a great film. it's really hard to top this movie. This is a great movie all around. One of John Hughes' best movies. One of Chris Columbus's best movies. Of course, Macaulay Culkin's career took a huge jump after this. Turned him into a superstar. Need I say more? Need I really say more about this movie? It's a classic film. It's always going to be one I'm going to watch every holiday multiple times. It's the one movie I've watched multiple times, especially in the last few years because it's been playing on Freeform. I think last year it was on every other day during the holiday season, and then I watched it more times than the times I didn't watch it. I mean, that's how much I love this movie so much. I could watch this movie so many times and never get tired of it whatsoever. It's a great movie, fantastic film. I don't really need to add any more to this. Home Alone, classic movie, and one of the biggest movie hits of all time. I mean, it really was a phenomenon at the time that's really hard to really top nowadays. I mean, you can't really find this kind of success anymore, quite honestly. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about Home Alone. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the next movie, which, judging by what this was, I'm pretty sure that this was supposed to be the big hit of the weekend, and then it just, not so much. It's Sylvester Stallone in Rocky V. So yeah, who would have guessed that this movie was so bad that the previous movie with the talking robot and Rocky going to Russia to fight Dolph Lundgren would be the better movie out of this? Because wow, this was a major miscalculation. I mean, I got what Sylvester Stallone was trying to do. He was trying to take it back to the days of the the original Rocky, but really, this movie just failed on so many levels that it just didn't really work out as well as I think they wanted it to. But when you have a movie where the main bad guy of the movie isn't really that threatening whatsoever, and most of it just takes place in the back alleys of Philadelphia, I mean, it just doesn't work. The movie just really is a cluster. It just doesn't make any sense. It has a lot of continuity errors to it. The medical inaccuracies in this movie really just don't work at all. I think that it's because I think Sylvester Stallone wanted to have a darker Rocky movie, and that's why he had the idea of and like you see it in the trailer where Rocky has like brain damage, kind of, but the movie doesn't really allow for that to do that. I think MGM wanted to make this a safe and marketable movie for reasons that are beyond me. And really, if you look at the Creed movies, especially the Creed movies, I think did a better job of going a little bit darker than the previous Rocky movies. Maybe not in full, but a lot of the ideas I think Stallone wanted to put in Rocky V are definitely seen in movies like the Creed movies, or even something like Rocky Balboa in a way, which we'll get to that one when we get to that one when that comes out in 2006. But you get the idea. You get the idea that this movie really fell apart largely because of creative differences, a bad script, really bad characters, really bad continuity and medical errors, and it just didn't seem like there was really that much of a need this time around. Like in Rocky IV, it was silly, it was over the top, but at least it had a story you can get invested in. There's nothing here you can get invested in at all. It just feels like a parody of a Rocky movie, honestly, when you really look at it overall. So yeah, so the Rocky franchise came to an end for a brief period of time with this, and then they kind of reestablished it again with Rocky Balboa, but that was further down the road. And needless to say, this movie just ends the series on a really bad note. So that's Rocky V. Now let's go ahead and move on to a much better sequel that got thrashed by audiences. Nobody went to go see it, unfortunately, but it's another underrated Disney classic, and that is The Rescuers Down Under. I mean, talk about a great double feature that is. You get a good Rescuers sequel, and before that, you get a really good Mickey Mouse short in The Prince and the Pauper, which they say it's 10 years since Mickey made his appearance on the big screen in a short film, but I mean, technically, Mickey's Christmas Carol did come out in '83, so really it was about 7 years, but I mean, they're close enough. 10 years, I mean, you round that up, it's pretty much 10 years, but yeah, Prince and the Pauper, I'll briefly talk about that one because that's a pretty good short. It's a pretty good retelling of the story of the Prince and the Pauper. Of course, you have Mickey Mouse and the prince, they switch lives. The prince goes on to live with the peasants, and Mickey the peasant gets to live a life as a prince. One of the guards, played by Pete, wants to kill the prince and take over the kingdom, and pretty much everything. Pretty much the story of the Prince and the Pauper, pretty much. And like with Mickey's Christmas Carol, they do a pretty good job with it. They do a good job keeping the story short. It's only a 22-minute short, and it's a really good animated short. The animation in that is incredible. It still holds up to this very day. It does a good job of keeping the pacing very well, despite the time period. It mixes the comedy and little bits of drama in there, too, that are actually very good. The voice work is very well done. You got Wayne Allwine back as the voice of Mickey Mouse and the Prince. And he actually does a pretty good job in both roles. Like, I didn't think he could pull off a British British kind of accent, but he does in this short playing the Prince, and he does a very good job with it. And it's an overall great short. I would have liked to see this double feature on a big screen, especially with this intermission segment that they had in here, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, you basically got a 10-minute intermission to go get your popcorn, go to the bathroom, do whatever you needed to do before the Rescuers Down Under starts, and then the movie would begin. And Rescuers, I think, was about, let me see here. Yeah, Rescuers was close to about an hour and a half, so basically you had a 2-hour package here. And I always think back to when Coco had the Frozen Christmas short that they had at the beginning of that movie, which was basically the Christmas special that you see on TV every year. And I think the reason why that didn't work out as well is because that Frozen short, you have the Frozen short, which is about a half hour, and then you have Coco, which is about a 2-hour movie. So you're sitting there for 2.5 hours. You don't get that little intermission in between like you do with this. And I think people were really upset at that, even though I thought both of them worked very fine. I don't think they really should have been plastered together like that, especially with a movie that's over 2.5 hours. With a movie that's over 2 hours long. With this, I think it works better, even with that little 10-minute thing. I am kind of curious of what they did between the credits and then the actual movie. I really think that they probably could have put maybe another short in there, or I think they may have had like some kind of trivia thing. I know they had that when the Toy Story double feature came out in 3D about 10 plus years ago. But that was an interesting little bit of footage I found on YouTube. But as far as Rescuers Down Under goes, yeah, it's a great movie. It's a fantastic, very underrated Disney movie. What's interesting about this movie is that it's the first time they fully used the computer animation production system, the CAP system, which basically digitizes all the ink and painting and the animation drawings, and it would allow for these films to come out faster and look much better, look much crisper. And you can definitely see that, especially in the early scenes of this movie, where you have the kid and his gold eagle flying up in the air. The scenes of those flying scenes still hold up to this very day. This movie is over 30 years old, and those scenes still hold up to this very day with the music by Bruce Broughton. It's great to watch. And like, you have a great villain here, George C. Scott playing the bad guy. You've got Bob Newhart and Eva Gabor returning as Bernard and Bianca. You got John Candy playing Wilbur in this. He's very good in this. And the movie is just a ton of fun. It's a very good movie, a well-made film, nicely animated, great story, great villain, great characters, just a fun, enjoyable adventure. And it's a shame that nobody went to see it. And I remember watching the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary where they talked about how Jeffrey Katzenberg said that they pulled the marketing after the first weekend because the movie didn't do well. And so this movie barely made any money because most of the advertising was already gone after the first weekend. And this was before the Thanksgiving Christmas rush came into play. So Jeffrey Katzenberg basically took a risk by pulling all the advertising. He didn't even wait to see if this movie would play well over the holidays. And the movie, I think, was out of theaters by the time Christmas came around, which is a shame because people really missed out on another great Disney movie in 1990. There was this and then DuckTales the movie, which we talked about earlier. They missed out on some great movies here, and The Rescuers Down Under is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, which I don't know who would, but if you haven't seen who wouldn't have, but if you haven't seen Rescuers Down Under, please go watch it. It's a very good movie that severely got thrashed by the box office, but it's more than worth seeing in theaters. I'm getting confused here. It's more than worth seeing. You could definitely find it on the Disney Plus. Please seek it out. It's a fantastic movie. I can't recommend that movie enough. Rescuers Down Under. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, which is the only one that I have no real recollection about. It's called Eating. So yeah, I don't really know too much about this movie, but I will tell you the plot because I have Wikipedia right here, and I'll tell you about it. Featuring an all-female cast, the film is set entirely and around a spacious home in Los Angeles. Helene is a woman who is turning 40 years old, and her friends, including French filmmaker Martine, houseguest Sophie, and Lydia, throw a party. But also there is Kate, a friend turning 30, and Sadie, a Hollywood film agent turning 50. So all of Helene, Kate, and Sadie's friends arrive for the triple birthday party, where Martine films the events with her movie camera, as well as the shocking secrets revealed behind her mother Whitney and younger sister Nancy, who confide in the interviews about their obsessions with food and their roles in life. So it sounds like it's kind of a mockumentary type of film, but like I said, I really don't know too much about this. Obviously, I haven't seen it, but I mean, it's an interesting concept. It does sound like an interesting concept, just the way that this is presented, but judging by the fact that I have not heard too much about this movie since this came out, nobody really ever talks about it, and I'm going to assume that it didn't really meet up with the expectations that a lot of people had for it. But, again, who knows? Maybe it has this cult following that I'm aware of, but no, as far as I know, there isn't, but that's just what I saw from this little trailer here. I know I showed a little bit there, but there's definitely more to it, and it is pretty much just everybody talking and eating and doing stuff and talking about life and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like I said, I can't really comment on it. I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really comment on it. So that's Eating for you. And with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time around, we look to Thanksgiving weekend 1990 with 6 movies, including the sequel 3 Men and a Little Lady, featuring the returns of Steve Guttenberg, Ted Danson, and Tom Selleck. Another sequel, Predator 2. The animated movie The Nutcracker Prince, the cult film Robot Jocks, Mr. and Mrs. Bridge, and Hidden Agenda. So we'll have 6 movies to look at next time around, so definitely stay tuned for that. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and as always, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a new episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and until then, take care.